Welcome to Robotics and Automation News webinars, where you can be part of a global event without leaving your home or office. Attend our live webinars and communicate directly with influential professionals in your industry.
Hello, my name is Abdul Muntakim. I'm editor of Robotics and Automation News.com. In this interview, I speak to Nicola Olivetti, a Lean Six Sigma expert and the Lean and Industry 4.0 program director at a company called Kapit, with responsibility for an application called iObeya. iObeya is a software application that can be used as virtual meeting rooms, but it's much more than that, as you might expect from Nicola's job title and background. The iObeya software is capable of pulling in massive amounts of data from all across a business, large or small, and provide deep insights into each department. As you can imagine, this raises many questions about the way complex enterprises are managed today and how they can be managed in the future.
My name is Nicola Olivetti, the English version. I am the program director for the Lean and Industry 4.0 programs at Kapit, who's the editor of a software whose name is iObeya. iObeya is a digital visual management software that is now been existing for in his commercial version for more or less 4 years. And well, my job specifically, I have many responsibilities, but the main responsibility is to define the roadmap for both Lean and in particular Industry 4.0 programs, and that means listen to the customers, understanding what are the market trends, understanding what are the technological trends, and transform all this into something that is projected in time in our roadmap on one hand, and the other hand is just making sure that the program is working correctly, that we acquire new customers, the customer base is satisfied, and that the current features being developed are well, received by the market.
Thanks for that. Before I ask anything else, I'm really interested in your second name. I know it as, I don't know, other people, younger people might not remember, but Olivetti used to make typewriters mainly, but maybe they made computers as well. I don't know. I don't remember. What's are you connected with that? Obviously, you got the same name.
Yeah, this is a nice question. Thank you. Actually, somewhere or another, I'm connected. Well, the first question about Olivetti, yes, they did. They used to be making typewriters and computers as well. And well, theoretically, let's say that technically, they seem like to be the first in history to invent the personal computer. Then, unfortunately, they didn't manage the advance well because the story, everybody knows the story, and now already is not that much of a known brand. That was for the first question. For the second question, I'm probably somehow related to the family. And actually, we come more or less from the same region, that is Piemonte. That is a region in northern western Italy. And actually, originally, family comes from Ivrea. And my family is not far away from there. So there might be probably some kind of link.
It's very interesting. I think, yeah, names are interesting. And that particular name, obviously, is very interesting. And yeah, it's got a interesting history, and it's kind of fitting that you're in a fairly advanced area of computer technology. It is software, obviously, but it's an area that a lot of people are interested in. The idea of visually seeing on screen the entire operation in a business, whether it's a manufacturer. It can apply to everything, but I suppose I should ask you first, what is your experience with the manufacturing and the traditional industrial sector, like logistics and things like that, in terms of your customer base and the kind of companies who use your system?
Well, I can answer in two ways. Basically, there's my personal experience as a consultant in the past, where I worked, let's say, um, 60 to 70% of my time with manufacturing companies, not always with production functions, but basically with manufacturing companies in all kind of different industries, from mechanics to pharma, through tire makers and other and then chemistry, for example, just to mention some of them. Well, my personal experience is been in leading transformation programs with those companies that wanted to become leaner. And one of the essential building blocks of those transformations was actually the deployment of visual management. That is a kind of a system within the system, and it is a very strong enabler in terms of steering your business, starting from the visualization of what is important and what has to be done to whenever the performance is getting worse, and all this system design, system deployment with people was really a key mission of in my previous jobs. And after that, I worked for two consulting companies, and then I joined a cable maker, well-known French cable maker called Nexans. Where actually I was part of the team in charge of the turnaround strategy of Nexans, and well, that included the fact that we tried to have a holistic approach, for example, for a given plant, to make sure that we were able to pull together all different functions. There were there may be sales, operations, engineering, and marketing, to basically, in a very fast way, be able to impact the P&L and the operating working capital.
Right, and let's just start with a fairly basic explanation of your product or service, the digital visual management. And then I'll ask you about your concept of human centricity and automation. But let's first start with a basic explanation of your product, what it does in terms of, I imagine that it basically monitors more or less everything in a business, from machines to activity on computers. Does it integrate ERPs or MESs or anything like that? Give us a basic explanation of the software.
Yeah, this is a very good question. Basically, just to make it very simple, we try to. I mean, the human-centric part is so important, actually, that we wanted really to build something around people. So and something very, very user-centric. And so what we observe in reality is that you might have Obeya rooms. Obeya is a Japanese term to say big room. Is a room basically where you pilot, your pilot, when you manage, when you steer visually your projects. And we want to replicate this. So we wanted to replicate reality in a very simple way, and to make the user experience extremely immersive, actually to make adoption very, very easy. So just to parallel the two things, if you had a physical room, iObeya room in the beginning, well, now you have a virtual room. Within this physical room, you had whiteboards. Well, now you have whiteboards that are virtual, and on these physical whiteboards, you used to posting all kind of post-it papers, graphs, action plans, and well, we replicated this in the same way with virtual, sticky notes, action plans, and for example, also pins to highlight some problems, electronic ink, and so on. So the underlying idea was really not to get people lost and to kind of replicate the experience on large touch screens, where you could move around the post-its, and replicate this kind of very, very physical experience. This is the concept explained in a few words. Of course, with digital, there are many advantages, and one of them is to solve the critical problem that you might have for example, in multi-located project teams. That is actually the fact that they are apart. And so, thanks to the digital room, anyone can access from any device, anytime, anywhere. So collaboration is made very easy, and it doesn't really matter if your project team is located. We have some people in London, some other people in Tokyo, and other people in Sydney. They will be able to very easily collaborate visually because they all have access to the virtual room that replicates reality, just like they just as if they had a key of a physical room, and where that they could access anytime, anywhere.
Right. I'm looking at the images on your article or website, and you've shown logos for SAP and Excel and other sort of well-known software like that, Oracle and so on. Did your software integrate those into one, or how do people communicate if a person is using a particular software and they want to share some information about that? I mean, essentially, your software enables people to meet and collaborate and share fairly complex and perhaps large amounts of data in simple ways. I don't know if I'm getting that right, but what other software does it integrate?
This is a very good question. Actually, there are two questions within the same question. So I'll try to answer the first one and then the other ones. I mean, the second one. The first thing is visual management and then digital visual management. Well, visual management is basically to define it, you have to answer to two simple questions, but how you do it is pretty sophisticated and complex. Well, the two simple questions are: if you are a team, what do you need to know as a team, and what do you need to share in terms of information as a team to perform better and to improve, in your everyday business, whoever you are, no matter if you are a top management team, a board, or you are a team in the field managing production line, or a team of maintenance people taking care of this line. It doesn't really matter where the team is. The same question is there. Of course, the scope of the question becomes larger the more the higher you are in the hierarchy. But the very questions, the fundamental questions stay the same. What do we need to know? What do we need to share to impact our business positively? So this is the essence of visual management. And people basically, to answer this question, they define the content of the board. Usually they answer to the when I used to implement, visual management when I was a consultant. We had the simple rule of the three P's. That is people, problems, and performance. Sorry, and problems, of course, in a positive way, which is the continuous improvement way. And so basically, I with teams who went through these three categories and tried to answer to fill in the right content for every category. And there was the starting point of a journey of continuous improvement when this board would change and improve in time according to the different situations business. So this was the first question. In terms of integration, iObeya is a software that actually allows through two tools in our APIs and our SDK, which is a software development kit. They allow anyone to plug into any software, basically any system. So whenever you are an iObeya user, you could plug, to your directly to a machine. You can plug to a database, you can plug to your ERP. Virtually anything can exchange data with iObeya through the API. And if you are even more, let's say, if you want to go deeper into this integration, you could even, if you have, of course, the capabilities to do that, you can develop your own content, your own features with the software development kit. And this makes iObeya a very, very powerful tool, because basically you get in the platform the power of digital plus all the integration of complex data that can be pulled by iObeya and visualized in an easy way, in your board to help, teams make the right decisions. And that answers the first question, that is, what do we need to know to positively impact our performance?
Okay, and you've answered this before. You've talked about this subject before, and it relates to your interest in human-centric automation, I suppose. But I was wondering, I don't know if it's too big a question to ask in terms of there's three subjects that you've talked about: artificial intelligence, industrial Internet of Things, augmented reality. I wonder, you're an expert in obviously this area. A lot of people are interested in how those technologies are going to affect businesses, manufacturing business, industrial business in particular, because a lot of them are adopting these things in a way, sometimes more so than the wider economy. Augmented reality, for example, seems to be quite well used by engineering companies to perhaps collaborate and test, or at least look at virtual items as they're designing them, or maybe present them and things like that. That's one example I can think of. You would know better than me what are the other examples. But yeah, how do those technologies, AI, IoT, and augmented reality, and possibly virtual reality, affect companies and industries and people?
Yes, this is a very, very interesting and passionate question. That's my job. That's why I love it. There's a short answer and a long answer. I'll try to make the to shorten down the long answer. Um, um, Basically, there are two aspects there are two trends right now, macro trends that are happening in our economies. Well, the first macro trend is something that kind of have been going on since probably the Industrial Revolution. That is the fact that we're generating. I mean, the mankind is discovering more and more every day, basically, and we're accelerating our discovery process, and we get to know more and more. And this leads basically to the fact that to knowledge specialization. So people are more and more specialized, in different topics, in different fields, because it's just so hard for a single human being to know everything, because the mass of knowledge is so large. And what is happening right now with the technologies you just mentioned, like for example, integrated machines, the Internet of Things, and so on, is that this generation of information is growing even faster than in the past. So basically, we are generating huge, massive data, and we need actually technologies to help us, digest this data and help us learn faster and make decisions. And this is the role of data science and artificial intelligence so far. And so basically, the human-centric thing topic is, or issue, depending on the point of view, is what will be, how will human beings interact in a professional environment, how they are going to interact with these different technologies. Well, the idea is the entry point should always be people first, and processes, and then technology. And the idea to make these human-centric and effective is the fact that from a business point of view, you need to know in parallel what technologies can or cannot do, what is the maturity level, but you also have to very lucid about what are your problems in your processes and how those technologies can help you fix some of those problems and not the contrary.
And how are people, from your observations, how are people, how is industry using these new technologies? Are they using them effectively, or are they still in the process of learning how to make use of them, testing them, and so on? And what's your view of how people are using these fairly advanced technologies with a great promise?
Yes, there's a great promise, and then there is reality. 80, I mean, according to some surveys, 80% of the companies are testing or plan to test in the very short term these technologies, which is a pretty big percentage. 80% is really huge, and but only a few of these 80% can be considered as real leaders, being able actually to leverage those technologies effectively. And basically, one of the criteria to be a leader and not a laggard in that is the clarity of vision that you have in terms of a business landscape, which is what are your customer needs? Where are your companies in terms of pains, and how those technologies can solve those pains. when you have a lucid, view of this, well, you will be probably able to leverage, to be a leader and to leverage those technologies better, rather than doing the contrary. So instead of being a pull mode, being a push mode, where basically, okay, you're pushing technologies in your process, and you don't really know exactly what is the problem to be fixed. In this case, you can generate basically frustration, and you may run the risk of being directionless. So you lose time, money, you frustrate people, and it may be end to also be a real problem in terms of change with your teams in the field.
Right, and how does your concept of a human-centric workforce um, uh, decide, how do you decide the balance and mix or blend between human activity and automated, perhaps computer or robotic activity? What is, I don't know if it's right to ask what is more important and whether it's important to balance them by having 50-50, or is the objective to try and reduce the amount of human involvement or necessary sort of engagement, and try and automate everything? And what's the balance, if you like, in a situation where humans are needed as well as automation? What should be the overall goal or aim to try and achieve? I mean, I'll just give you an example. A lot of the questions I ask tend to be aimed at how do you achieve more efficiency, how do you achieve more productivity, and both those questions tend to the answer tends to be more automation, more machines, less humans. Basically, that's why I'm asking. I mean, why think about human-centric rather than automation-centric, if you like?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Thank you. I'm personally, and I mean, and we as a company on this standpoint are not inventing anything, really new. Everything I will be saying comes from lean principles that take their origins from the Toyota production system. But basically, the idea is, as I mentioned, is always to put people and processes first, and then technology, and not the contrary. So you're in a pull mode. You have problems that you want to solve, and you know that technology will help you solve that specific problem in your process. And then you will, at that point, you will pull in the technology and test it. This is kind of, those are the basic steps. In terms of how do you increase efficiency and productivity, well, the path is pretty much the same, and stays unchanged since decades. So basically, the first thing is not automation at all, is waste. Where is your waste? And what how do you see it, first thing? And once that you see it, what do you do to remove it? And removing waste doesn't necessarily mean automation. And the goal is absolutely not to automate waste. When you see waste, the ideal thing is just to remove it. That's it. And then once you removed it, well, in your processes, you can observe that there are different levels of tasks that make your process and your flow work more or less well. And the idea would be to build together with the operational teams to empower them to better understand the process, better see where the low value added tasks in it, or what are the pain points, and to identify together with, for example, continuous improvement engineers or people knowing the current state of the technology, see where the solution could be automation. And then after you decide that, you pilot, you see if the expected results are there, and if are not, well, you can always move back. And this is, the eternal continuous improvement, try and error, path that makes the evolution in processes. So the basically, if I had to give a simple, step-by-step approach, would be observe where are the waste, how to remove them, where are the low value adding task, and if your operational teams think that this is worth automating, okay, let's test it. That would be the first phase. And then after you did all that, well, you can start moving to second level. That is, okay, let's see what unprecedented experience and features we can get through technologies that will be able to suggest and help us see things we don't see today. Like, for example, the application of artificial intelligence to some, for example, some quality issues that are very hard to be detected visually by a human being, and where artificial intelligence can definitely help and reduce this and divide the execution times by 100, for example. But this would be just a second step once you master and you perfectly know how your processes are working.
Right. You've produced some really interesting diagrams, and one I like. Everybody likes diagrams and systems, diagrams of systems, and one of the ones I like is you have a sort of I'll probably show it in the final edit, but yeah, it's got 4 squares on it with an arrow going underneath them. Upwards, and it starts with the first box, daily team meeting, and then the next box is problem solving, the next box is steering, leadership, and the final 4th box is business and operations review. I always find it, as I say, very interesting to look at systems, and you always think that if you're in charge of a fairly sizable business, even small business with a few dozen people, you're looking at trying to manage things efficiently and well, not just the systems and the operations, but the people as well. So there's a lot of systems involved, and the idea of trying to impose a diagrammatic, nice looking system on a company, it's probably not that straightforward and easy, but I do still find them very interesting. One of the things I used to, I became interested in a little while ago is something called cybernetics. Now, I don't know how I came across this, but cybernetics is some sort of study, transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary study of different things, systems, and it's systems which learn and then put that learning back into the process and improve as a result, and so on. It's a lot more complicated than what I'm explaining. I'm trying to summarize it. But what are the systems that you could start off with the explanation of the diagram that I just mentioned that you made with the 4 squares in it. But what are the systems that appeal to you? What are the systems that work and maybe produce results? And is it possible to impose a nice looking system on paper onto the real world in a real business?
This is this is a change management question. Basically, that's like the difference, of course, between theory and reality. You have a nice design business that might be relevant, but you to make it work, you have to implement it. So basically, the final result is the multiplication of all the factors and not the sum. So to make it very simple, of course, the equation has a lot of factors, but if you really had to make it very simple, is how it is the multiplication of basically how relevant your theoretical solution is, so how relevant is the design of the system, times how well it is implemented. Well, you may have a super relevant system, but if it's not well implemented, you get nothing in the end. And this is exactly what you mentioned. Uh, there is to be a buy-in from the stakeholders, and first of all, more empowerment for teams. So basically, teams must be able to change the paradigm in their everyday life in how they perceive and understand their everyday reality through the implementation of these technologies. So basically, if you want people to buy in, those technologies must have an impact, a fast impact, and improve their everyday life. Because that's the view. You cannot ask an operator to have the same depth of view and the same perspective as a CEO. They have their reality is different. They have different problems, even if they're part of the same company. And you need to impact the paradigm of the operator very fast, because he needs to see his reality changing for the better, to really adopt a given technology. So, for example, when you have robots, well, if a robot or a cobot will help, an operator reduce the number of pounds he lifts every day, and well, the pain for his back is reduced. Well, this may sound silly, but it is a very, very important thing for him. And that will help him, focus more on the problem-solving side, and save energy and pain, by the way, in his everyday life. So basically, those systems that work, those systems that are basically well explained, well managed in terms of change, and where where teams are empowered and see fast results. The graph you just mentioned is a graph about the escalation system of the escalation mechanism of a performance management system. Is something you need, whatever the business, no matter if you run a bakery shop or a multi-billion dollar company, of course, in different scopes, but you will need absolutely this kind of, a feedback loop to steer your business. And yes, for the specific example, yes, it works, but it needs to be intertwined with the empowerment of teams, because teams need to see what they do, and they need to impact and see their improvement actions accelerate in terms of implementation to make the system work. Thanks to digital visual management, if the right routines are carried out every day with the right managerial posture, with the right culture, well, basically you get a multiplying factor through digital visual management that actually gets up to lead time between problem raised and decision from the bottom to the top and all the way down, that is divided more or less by 10, which is huge. And that is a very, very concrete effect on everyday life of operators, because their actions basically they get an answer, a real answer, 10 times faster, and that changes their lives.
Yeah, as I say, I find systems interesting, and you sort of preempted my next question in the sense that you said that that's a feedback loop that is necessary in any kind of business, really. My next question was going to be, are there systems which kind of fit most businesses, or most businesses need, or each business uh, different and can do things differently? I mean, does it require a custom system or custom way of doing things? I suppose if you get down to the detail, everybody is unique and different and all that. But the bigger the company, the more the people, then perhaps the more the systems need to come into play, and the systems need to be implemented. As you say, if it's not implemented, it can be a very nicely designed system, but if it's not implemented, then it's no good. But yeah, that's is a general. What is the general principle? Is it better to design a custom way of doing things, or can there be systems like yours, if I could call it off the shelf or ready-made systems, that you can say, well, look, this is the feedback loop, we're going to try and implement this four-stage process. What do you think is the? I mean, I would imagine that all large-ish companies would want a system-based approach rather than a highly customized, individualized sort of way of doing things.
Yeah, actually, what is common for everyone is our principles. Uh, Principles should be the same for basically are the same for everyone, because they are kind of universal principle. Like let's say that kind of uh, universal business laws. Pretty much like a like the force of gravity. While you observe it and you described it, but you cannot avoid it because this is inevitable. That's the way nature works, and either you adapt it to it, either you will do it anyway because you cannot escape. Well, the principles are pretty much the same. They are universal and they're applicable to all of us, to all companies, all businesses. The challenge for every company is translate those principles into something practical that is adapted to their specific business, and to find their own way of translation and translating this general equation. Just imagine that you have like universal equation with different coefficients that are universal, and this general equation applies to everyone. But when you want to apply it to your own business, well, you need to know the value of every single coefficient, and you don't have the value of that coefficient. You don't know if the value is like 1,000 or 1 or 1.2 or 1.1. Well, you need to set all the different coefficients of this equation to make it work for your own business. If I had to kind of give a parallel with law of physics, I would use this example. And this is exactly what happens in every business. That what the hardest work is to translate this into the real, adapted to their business constraints and culture as well of the company. And all this is complicated, is further complicated by what we discussed before, that there are say the race of technologies that are making this even more complicated in terms of translation. But I would say that performance management, which is the example we took, is inevitable. Is something you cannot run a business without having it. The question is, how do you adapt it to it and make it as lean, as fast, as relevant as possible, and make people think and feel empowered by being part of that system.
All right. And finally, you're obviously an expert in meetings. Your software is, meeting or collaborative sort of environment. What would your tips be for effective meetings, to hold effective meetings? That's a very classic question. Everybody wants to know how to best use meetings, how to maybe conduct them more quickly or get more out of them. I mean, what are your tips for meetings in general?
This is a good question. We try to. It depends on the type of meetings that you have. For If you speak of daily stand-up meetings that are very timed, well, the basic idea is to kind of design and adjust. For a very recurrent meeting, everything needs to be prepared beforehand, of course. Well, you may have some changes, but you probably don't have all the time to do the changes live with all the people that are attending. First thing. Second thing, get the right information beforehand as well. Because sometimes if you have to make quick decisions, well, you don't have time to take a look for to go and look for those information. So basically you lose a feedback loop, which means that you will need to decide later, if not the next day. So if you need to make quick decisions, well, to have them before, have a clear agenda in terms of actions, define, this is a very basic thing, but define who's in charge of what and by when. And last but not least, be able to quickly say, sort out the size of different issues that you may have. There is the basic rule of something can be a just do it, so it's simply an action, can be an average size problem, or can be a complex problem. Well, during those meetings, the team needs to learn how to sort out those quickly. And depending on the size of the problem, the problem solving process will be completely different. Just do it will be a just do it. A kind of average size problem will probably follow an A3 standard, and a complex problem will probably need a cross-functional project team that is dedicated. So I would say you need the one of the rules is you don't solve problems during the meeting, but you are quickly able to size, actually to decide what is the size in terms of complexity. And last but not least, you repeat those 3 or 4 rules I just mentioned. You write them, you make them visible. Everybody is supposed to agree. I mean, those are supposed to be built together as a team, those rules. And one basic rule is at the beginning of every stand-up meeting, you repeat those rules, just to remind people that, yes, guys, we all agreed on those, and this is our team law or constitution that we agreed upon. So just to recap, so first advice is prepare the agenda that must be very clear. Second advice, try to have the information ready beforehand. Third advice is if you don't solve problems, but try to gauge the size of the problem, its complexity. And for those problems, you always need to have an owner and a deadline. And last but not least, remember the rules that you agreed upon every time. We are living a revolution in companies, and in some way, this is the personal computer revolution that started in the 80s is happening. Is re-happening at a collective at a collective level, which means by that I mean that in the 80s we had a revolution and we gave everyone a PC and we got an interface that is an individual interface between the single person and the machine and the system. In terms of interaction, we're adding a new layer with digital visual management. And this new layer is the interaction of many people on the same interface. To do what? Well, to steer the business, steer the activity, and take decisions together. And so I think this collective decision-making revolution is happening right now. And I mean, if we just imagine that we had to do a fast forward in the next 20 years, in 20 years, companies will be completely different. And you will have, the visualization of flows, of business, of issues, of problems everywhere. And the way people will work together will be completely different. Will be more flat, will be flatter, and much more oriented according to the value stream than it is today. And all this will be made possible by three things. There are three main factors that will make this happen. The first thing is methodology, the fact that people are learning and companies are learning how to work better together. And that is the part of the visual management methodology and lean. The second thing is the fact that there are economies of scales that are generated on flat touch screens. Just imagine that in 20 years, those touch screens will cost let's think in an unconstrained way, but if they could cost $200 each, you would have it everywhere. And this third thing is the software, and this is what we provide, and that are immersive and really allow people to have a kind of a paper-like experience by leveraging the best of digital visual management and on the digital dimension of what we offer. And the combinations of the three factors are basically are fueling this revolution that will make the ways of working completely different in the next decades to come.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. That was very interesting.
Send us an email at sales@roboticsandautomationnews.com to register for one of our many upcoming webinars. And if you'd like us to host your webinar, we have a range of options, including long-term lead generation packages and marketing campaigns. We look forward to hearing from you soon.